Hello, I'm Tammy, and I appreciate you joining me here. I'm decided I'm going to start doing a different series because I am very interested in providing you with information that you can use and not just voicing my opinion. So I mentioned a few videos back that there are some big changes coming, and this happens to be one of them. So um, in this case, well, first of all, let me just announce I do volunteer at a radio station, and that's where you see me here today. And I'm in the middle of a music set, so I thought I would talk a little bit how to manage yeast. Okay. And if you're new to my channel, welcome. If you've been here for a while, thank you for hanging with me on this. My background does include aromatherapy, pharmacology, the study of food, in the sense of the nutrients, macro and micronutrients. So I like to call it the science of nutrition. And so this is how I work. This is how I pair things together. And this is what I've found to be effective with many of the people that I get the pleasure of serving. So with that said, how to manage yeast. So the first thing I want to say is, I'm going to adjust the camera here just a tad, pardon me, that where does yeast come from? Okay, so please know that our body houses countless scores of viruses, bacteria, and yeast. Okay. In previous videos, I talked about that when estrogen levels go up, histamine levels go up, and then ultimately yeast levels go up. Okay, so I just want you to know that yeast is in your system all the time. And since making those statements a couple years back, I've gone on and done an extensive amount of research to get to really understand what the heck is going on and really redefine the way we support the body. And ultimately, what we want to do is not just target the yeast in this case, we want to emphasize stability within the system. Okay, so I will get to where yeast comes from, but I want to say this much. Estrogen is a primary signaling molecule. We recognize it as a reproductive hormone, but it also has other uses in the body, which includes activating the autonomic nervous system as well as in signaling immune activity. Okay, this is the reason why histamine levels go up. Okay, when the body is, so when the autonomic nervous system is activated or it's been signaled to, like, our life is being threatened, let's do this. What ultimately happens is it interrupts the digestive system. In the sense, it negates our ability, or the body's ability rather, to break down glucose and protein more specifically. Now, it does affect lipid metabolism as well, but in this case, we're really looking at the way the body is not fully utilizing the glucose, because glucose needs to be broken down. It does come from carbs, but it's not because carbs are bad. It's because the body's not breaking the glucose down, because glucose needs to be converted into other sugars that are important for nerve and brain health. Okay, along with other functions in the system, including energy. So that said, with the higher levels of glucose, the yeast is going to feed off of that. Okay, so the yeast is actually feeding off the sugar, hence our cravings for carbs, hence our sugar weakness that people say, I don't have any willpower when it comes to carbs or sugars. Let me just say, you do. It's just that your brain is functioning differently, number one, because it's not getting all of the nutrients that it needs. Okay. Number two, the yeast is feeding on it. It's asking for it. So it's not that you're weak. It's that we have, just making sure that people on the listening to the radio aren't hearing this. That it's not that you're weak, and it's not that the yeast is bad. It's just this is the body's reaction to stress. And ordinarily, if it was just a temporary life-threatening issue or a temporary threat to the body, this deactivation or this lack of breakdown would convert back to full breakdown. Okay, so because what ends up happening is the acetylcholine that is used to activate and signal autonomic function is also necessary for digestion. But if it's primarily being used to signal fight or flight, then the digestive system doesn't get the full use of the acetylcholine. This actually translates into other skin issues, as well as other autoimmune issues. And we can do that in another video, because I'm going to get into skin on that one. But in this case, with regards to yeast, that's what's going on. And so when the acetylcholine isn't being used, then the digestive system is disrupted. And this is the reason why we're not seeing the breakdown of glucose. So that said, accentuated levels of glucose and all these alterations that have gone on in the system due to endocrine disruptors that we will get here momentarily, it alters the way the body metabolizes histamine. It alters the way the body is actually not using or using sugar. It interferes with the body's ability to assimilate carbohydrates more effectively. And so we have, again, a buildup of yeast. Now, to try to eliminate yeast from the body is kind of futile, because it's not possible to eliminate yeast, because it grows in our system. That we, like I said, we're host to it. So the idea is to slow the production down. Now, if you've ever watched any of my other videos, you've heard me talk about oxidative stress and slowing down oxidative stress. Okay, the body produces it, and we can eliminate the toxins that build up, but in order to actually reduce or slow the production down, we have to restore stability to the system. That's where I've gone with all of my practice. It's no longer about, I do look at symptoms. Symptoms are important, but the overall approach is stability. Okay. So what are some things that we can do to reduce yeast in the body and actually manage it? Well, first and foremost, understand, like I said, that there's endocrine disruptors, and that's primarily coming from the environment. There's been over 70,000 documented known chemicals that have been documented to be endocrine disruptors. Why I said that kind of weird. But there's tens of thousands, over 70,000 have been confirmed to be endocrine disruptors. And those are in the air, they're in our food, they're in the water, and more specifically, they're in our personal care. And while we cannot eliminate these chemicals overnight, and we can't eliminate them completely from our life, there are things that we can do to reduce our exposure to them. So number one would be to find ways to make your own personal care. I'm actually teaching this in Aromatherapy as a Lifestyle, how to create personal care products that directly are intentional for use for your system, but reduce your exposure to the number of chemicals that are in these products. Truthfully, our clothes generally have chemicals in them to kind of cut back on the bacterial buildup. We're seeing this and like I said, in the personal care products, and they've included chemicals that actually increase permeability through the skin. Why? I don't know. My guess would be as good as yours, except for the fact that that's, maybe they're trying to increase, there's certain chemicals in there that have are almost immediate effects, and that's what they're trying to do because they're trying to keep their sales up. I don't know. It's my guess is as good as yours, like I said. But what we do know is they've recognized there's several plant constituents that do affect tissue permeability, skin, lungs, brain, vascular system. And because they recognize this, they're implementing these in a lot of personal care products. And not to mention, like I said, then there's other things that they've added, chemicals that they've added that have specific purpose in the body, whether it be to plump the skin, okay, or to soften the skin or what have you. They've added these chemicals to it because, and they want to get it into your system. They want you to have an immediate reaction to it so that you go, wow, this really works. But who's to say that they're not affecting your hormonal system? Okay, so reducing the amount of personal care products that you buy commercially and very simply making new ones. In fact, I'm going to follow this up with a blog post that's going to say a lot of the same things, but in that I'm actually going to, and that's on synergessence.com. If you go over there, and I'm sure because I'm talking now and when I write, there's going to be some differences, but I will include a recipe for a salve that you can make that's great for every part of the body, and it would be and it's healthy. It stimulates healthy skin production, skin cell production, and it helps to eliminate the cells that are, dry, dead skin cells. So anyway, check that out. Like I said, I'm going to do that on my blog here, and I will have access to that recipe as well. In the meantime, you also want to reduce the number of phytoestrogens that you're consuming. Okay, now I recognize the fact that we talk about phytoestrogens and the prevention of cancer and the benefits to the body. And in an ideal world, that would be so. But we don't live in an ideal world. We live in this world, and it's ideally ours right now. But between the chemical estrogens or the endocrine disruptors that we're producing, mass producing, and then there's the phytoestrogens in the plants. So therefore, reducing your exposure to phytoestrogens. Now, that includes things like soy and flax seeds. I've had people question me on this statement because people in Asia have lower incidence of breast cancer and they eat a lot of soy. Let me just say this much. First of all, their soy wasn't GMO. It's now being GMO. I also want to let you know that their numbers for breast cancer and prostate cancer are increasing. So that statistic is no longer factual. So really kind of paying attention to what foods you're eating that contain, and you can search what foods contain phytoestrogens and just being mindful. I'm not saying eliminate them, but be mindful of, and vary your foods. That's the most important. When I was a kid, they used to talk about you want to eat a variety of foods, and I was like, oh, I like this. I like this. I'll eat peanut butter all day long, but we had to eat a variety, and now I get it. Okay, so a variety of foods, mixing it up, and just paying attention to which ones you're consuming that do contain phytoestrogens. Like I said, in fact, in my blog, I will put that in my blog. I'm sorry that I don't remember it right here, but I was sharing with someone that I'm working with. It's been diagnosed with estrogen dominance, and so I was reviewing. There's a lot of actually herbs too. That's more specifically to what I wanted to get at here. Those herbs will be listed in the blog. I can tell you that rhodiola was one of them that you want to reduce if you don't want to, or altogether. So like I said, I wish I could remember right now, but I don't. Anyway, that's in the blog. That said, in fact, then it's also oils. Several oils are estrogenic, and I've talked about this in other videos. And so you want to reduce the use of clary sage. You want to reduce your use of geranium, tea tree, lavender, very, very specifically with lavender. Those are to name a few. Now, what's interesting is the oils that we can select, such as lemongrass and dill and geranium and tea tree, all have antifungal effects. What's interesting to me is that they don't address the autonomic nervous system like I was talking about, but the geranium would to a degree, but it also has hormonal effects. So caution with that one. So like I said, and these depend on whether or not you're taking medications, but lemongrass, dill, tea tree, and geranium are the ones that and palmarosa would be another one that you could use that would be beneficial for fungus or yeast, and which is interchangeable really. So that would be helpful in reducing the symptoms of yeast buildup. But we also want to include oils that that soothe the autonomic nervous system, actually restore, kind of bring balance to the parasympathetic nervous system more specifically. And I would also encourage the use of including ones that also support digestion. Okay, so one that comes to mind right then and there is, in fact, marjoram sweet. It helps to soothe the parasympathetic nervous system, and it also supports digestion. I would also include cilantro and some coriander, because neither one of those really directly affect the hormonal system, but they also do help in restoring and providing stability to the system. Now, that could change depending on your specific needs, but those would be the ones that I would suggest to really help balance this out. And I would also include bergamot. That's what I wanted to say, bergamot. Now, we do know that cinnamon does help with blood sugar, right? I mean, we've heard that time and time again. I would avoid using the cinnamon oil for this reason, because it's a hot oil, which means it's very irritating to the skin, unless you have really serious issues with yeast, which could be vaginal yeast, could be on your feet, it could be under your arms. A lot of underarm odor is a result of yeast. Again, it could be related to alcohol. All of this is converted to sugar, and I'm not, so this isn't about. This is about just knowing our lifestyle and maybe making some changes to our lifestyle. If you are, in fact, always eating a lot of sugar, number one, understand that your body is actually asking for it for a good reason. It's needing the energy and it's actually feeding the yeast. So that might be a good reason to really rein it in on the amount of sugar that you're consuming. At the same time, helping the body, like I said, with those oils that I've already listed, and including things like potentially cinnamon, or at least adding cinnamon to your diet. Cinnamon has trace amounts of oil in it, but if you really want to use the oil itself, you really want to make sure you dilute it. You want to I would at least do like no more than a 2% dilution. So just minimal, you don't need a lot of it. Okay, that's the thing with the oils, is you don't need a lot of it. So that's all I'm going to say for now. I don't like to, I'm going to try to keep these to a minimum. I don't want to go too long, and I appreciate you watching. Like I said, based on what I just said here, I'm going to turn around and finish up my blog post, and there'll be additional information in there that you can benefit, kind of glean and get some good use out of. And I've also, like I said, there's some recipes, and I'll even add some dilution rates in there for you too. Okay? Anyway, hope you guys are doing well. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned. My next one is actually going to be on skin issues. All right? See ya.